Hey guys, Coach Mac, playfastfootball.blogspot.com. Today we want to talk a little bit about practice planning, effectively organizing and planning a practice to get the most out of your practice, and kind of gearing those practices to what you may need to do at your high school, depending on, you know, if the situations you have at your high school. Every high school is different. Your times you get out of school, where your coaches are coming from, whether they're on campus or off campus. Do you have mandatory study hall? You know, all the different things at every school that are going to change. And then also the structure of your practice is different based on whether or not you have kids that play only offense and only defense and you're working those practices every day, or if you have kids like at our school that play both ways. So one day for us is a full offensive day, one day for us is a full defensive day. All right, so practice plan that I'm going to talk about, that we wrote about in the blog today, and I'll talk a little bit about today. Practice plan we got on the board is basically geared towards having kids that play both ways, and we're talking about doing a full offensive day with some special teams work and some defensive team work at the end. All right, because for us, we play both ways, so the only way that we can keep our schemes and our game plans fresh in our kids' minds is we have to at least touch upon either the offensive or the defensive side of the ball every day. So if we have a full offensive day, we also have to incorporate some type of work on defense so that our schemes and our game plans and our fundamentals stay fresh in the kids' mind. For us at our school, we're going to start every day, every practice off with meetings. I think it's very important that you have as many meetings as possible with your kids and you keep it, you know, as close to an educational setting as you can. You actually have to, you know, chalk some things up and talk some things before you actually go through and walk and then run some things. So I think it's very important that you start off with meetings. What we like to do is we like to start off every practice with a 25-minute special teams meeting. We put a lot of time into special teams at our school. We think it's a very important part of the game. We have an extremely talented special teams coach that was a special teams coach in the NFL for 8 years. So I'm kind of blessed to have somebody that's that strong in the special teams game on my staff. So I'm going to make sure he gets appropriate time every day for us to feel like we can be, you know, or play an effective role with our special teams as 1/3 of our football program. So we start every day with a special teams meeting. After that, we're going to go to, if it's an offensive day, we're going to a 25-minute offensive meeting. And depending on the time of year or what's going on, depends on what's going on in that offensive meeting. If it's early in the year and early in camp, then you're probably installing some things. So you're probably teaching some of your plays and your schemes and your terminology and your communication, you know, on the board in an install session. If it's during the season, those offensive meetings start to become more watching film, looking at practice film and cleaning some things up, or maybe looking at your opponents on film so that you can start getting a feel for the fronts and blitzes and coverages and the talent that you're going to play that week and where we want to attack and the kids that are their best players and the kids that we think are a little bit weaker that we need to go after that week. All right, so depending on where you are in the year is going to depend on what things go on in those offensive meetings, but I think it's very important. If you have the flexibility and the capability to do so, I think you need to have offensive and defensive and special teams meetings before you ever do anything on the field. We also are going to have pre-practice drills for 10 minutes. I break them up into 2 5-minute segments. All right, so depending on what we're trying to accomplish that day, normally during one of the 5-minute segments, we're going to have our center snapping to our quarterbacks making short throws to get their arms loosened up. We're going to have our linemen are going to be working some footwork and some stance and start stuff, okay, and our receivers are going to be catching passes with the receiver coach while our running backs work on ball security. Then the next 5 minutes, all right, we'll take the whole line together, and now maybe I'll have the line walking through, you know, some different run schemes that week. Maybe we'll walk through veer, walk through power, walk through counter. If there's any protection issues that week that we got to discuss, maybe we'll walk through protection, while our quarterbacks, running backs, and receivers all throw either some type of pat and go drill or some type of noose drill or some type of warm-up drill where we got receivers catching passes, running backs catching passes, and quarterbacks throwing passes to make sure that they get loosened up. After that, we go to a 10-minute dynamic flex. By dynamic, I don't mean we won't be in lines doing static ballistic stretches. You know, we will be in lines doing dynamic running form type drills where we're doing shin grabs and we're doing butt kicks. All right, and we're doing lunge and scoop or lunge and twist, and then we're doing some form run, you know, 50%, 75% into full speed runs. All right, so we're using that as a way to do some form and technique drills while also using that as our dynamic warm-up. Okay. After our 10 minutes flex, we'll always go into some type of live 11-on-11 team drill. If it's an offensive day, all right, we'll either be doing goal line or short yardage, or maybe we'll be doing offense has 5 plays to get 25 yards, defense has to stop them, and then we'll keep track of what we're trying to do. If we're doing goal line, maybe it's 5 plays from the 3 and the offense has to score on 3 of them, but something that's live to get the pace of practice going right away, and something that is competitive that maybe has a winner and a loser, so that we can then have the loser have some, some circumstances or some, some quote-unquote extra conditioning they have to do for losing, so that you teach your kids how to compete, and that everything's about winning and losing a drill, winning and losing a game, winning and losing, when you go to work every day. If you go to an interview, you're competing with other people. You get the job, you win. You don't get the job, you lose. So we're trying to get our kids to understand, the value and the importance of competition in everyday life. Okay, so we also feel like that gets our drills going right away. I had a hard time with our guys for a while. If we went straight to Indy, or if we went into something a little bit slower after flex, the practices kind of reflected that, and we never got started. You got to start right to finish right. So we wanted to get our practices started. We wanted to get our kids involved. I think in high school, the thing you got to understand is, as a high school coach, you got to do a pretty good job pumping the practices up. I don't think the kids necessarily every day come as ready to practice maybe as an NFL team or a college team. So in high school, you need some guys. It's good to have on your staff some energetic, motivated guys that like to pump things up, talk a little bit. Offensive and defensive guys that like to chirp a little bit at each other, and it gets the kids fired up. It gets the practice off on the right foot, and then hopefully we can start the practice right so we can get through it and finish it right. After the live 11-on-11 drill, then we'll go back to Indy for about 20 minutes, depending on the time of the year. Sometimes later in the year it gets down to 15 if we got to incorporate more team settings. All right, we'll go to Indy for about 20 minutes. All right, and that's where you're going through all your Indy drills, making sure you're taking care of your everyday drills. But also at the same time, if there's anything that's being installed or any wrinkles or new things that are going in, you're also trying to make sure you cover those in Indy, so when you go to team periods, they're in and you don't have to stop. All right. After Indy, there will usually be a short water break. Okay, coming out of that water break, we'll go right into skeleton and pass protection. Our skills, quarterbacks, running backs, receivers will be throwing 7-on-7 against the defense. Early in the year, we do a lot of routes on air where we're throwing just our concepts to get our concepts taught. All right, and to get our spacing and our yards and our timing right. We'll throw a lot of routes on air as we progress through the season. That eventually becomes 7-on-7. Usually like to take the O-line at that point. I like to do pass protection drills. Sometimes we'll combine the pass protection with running backs, quarterbacks, and O-line, and we'll do blitz pickup. Sometimes I'll have the lineman working on particular screen game, all right, in that setting. If we are struggling at all in the run game, that might be a time where for 10 minutes I go through certain runs. If we're struggling with the power play, or we're struggling with the jet play, all right, if we're struggling with buck sweep, I may take those 10 minutes there, all right, or I may take 5 minutes to work pass protection and then 5 minutes to clean up whatever parts of the run game we need to clean up, okay? After that, we're going to go to team run 11-on-11. I like team run more than I like 7-on-7, or I'm sorry, inside run. I like team run more than I like inside run. I know a lot of guys will split up skeleton on one end, inside run on the other end. We have a lot of perimeter runs where our receivers are involved in the blocking. A lot of our run game is only as good as our receivers in that run game. All right, so I like doing 11-on-11 team run. I also like it because it helps us as an up-tempo, no-huddle team. It helps all 11 guys understand how to get the signals and communicate. It helps us get lined up, and it's more reps for us in our no-huddle, up-tempo system. So I like it 11-on-11 in a team setting in the run game a little bit better than I do individualized in an inside run period or a perimeter run period. Somewhere in there, you're going to have another water break, okay? Coming out of the water break, if you have time, depending on the time of the year, like sometimes you may not have time, but if you do have time, I like to do a screen draw period. All right, I like to do a period where we're focusing only on our screens and our draws. Not only do I think they're a very important part of your offense, but if you can do a 10-minute screen and draw period, that means that you can put less screens and draws into your team period. All right, because if you're putting screens and draws into your team period, the more screens and draws in a team period means the less base runs and passes are scripted in the team period. Okay, so if you can do a screen or draw period that you're focusing exclusively on screens and draws, now you don't have to script as many screens and draws into your team period. You can script 1 or 2 screens and draws so that you still have 8 to 10 base runs and base passes, the more screens that are in your team period, the less base runs and passes you're getting incorporated. So I'd like to have some type of screen and draw period. The only downfall to a screen or draw period is when the defense knows it's a screen or draw period and you don't get the adequate pass rush. A lot of times if the defense finds out that you're in a screen draw period, they play the period. They don't play football, they play the drill. So if they know that you're only running screens and draws that period, some of the defensive guys try to be scout team All-Americans. They play to win the drill and they don't rush the passer appropriately, so your screens and your draws become ineffective. So I like having a screen and draw period, but at the same time there's a downside to that. Sometimes your defensive kids play to win the period in the screen draw period and you don't get effective work. But if you could, I think it's good to have an individual screen draw period. All right, after that we'll go to a team period 11 on 11. That's when we're actually mixing in all our runs, passes, screens, everything we do as an offense. We are in a team setting 11 on 11. Again, I like team settings because it helps our up-tempo, no-huddle stuff, it helps our communication, and it helps us get our personnel on and off the field and get as many reps as possible in a game-type setting, changing from 1 back to 2 back to 3 back, changing from up-tempo to base tempo, changing the snap count, doing all the things that our kids need to do while they're tired, while they're fatigued, while they're nicked up or banged up a little bit. Need to be able to do those things and somehow simulate a game setting to the best of your ability in your practices if you want to run the style of offense that we like to run. You can't get good at it unless you do it. All right, so I personally, for myself, I like extra 11 on 11 team periods because I think it helps with our tempo and our personnel changes. Okay, after that team period, somewhere in there, another water break. Okay, after that water break, we usually like to finish with an up-tempo drill on air. And that'll be just our offensive guys starting from the sideline with a play call and then working down the field in all of our up-tempo, no-huddle packages while your personnel on the sideline is coming on and off the field like they would in a game setting, and your coach on the sideline is signaling plays in like he would in a game setting. Okay, I think all of these drills have to be run as close to game setting as possible. Now, every one of my coaches is going to have a script of the plays that we're running during each period. So the plays we're running are going to be scripted. So the guy that's calling the plays only has to call and signal in what's off the script. Okay, but I think it's very important that you try and work on signaling and communication in every single period. All right, signal and skeleton, signal and team run, signal and screen draw, signal in 11 on 11, and signal in your up-tempo drill. The more work you get on signaling and communications, and the big one is personnel changes, because we want to be up-tempo, but we also like to go from 1 back to 2 back to 3 back. Okay? So if you want to play up-tempo and you want to be no-huddle, you've got to be able to get those personnel changes on and off the field as quickly as possible so that you can still be an up-tempo team. If it takes you 15 seconds to change personnel, you're no longer an up-tempo team. Now, one of the benefits you have in high school is a lot of the times the referees don't set the football as quickly as they do in college or the NFL. So a lot of the times it takes the referees so long to spot the ball that you have adequate time to change personnel, and by the time the ball gets spotted, you can still change personnel and snap the football within 15 seconds from the time it gets spotted. So you have to understand the referees. Sometimes it hurts you a little bit when you're trying to stay with the same group and run the next play as fast as you can and they won't spot the ball, but sometimes it helps you a little bit if they don't get the ball spotted as quick. You can get personnel changes in and out and then still snap the ball within 12 to 15 seconds from the time it's spotted. Okay? So we'll go up and down the field with that up-tempo drill on air. We'll move the ball from left hash to right hash. Ball will be in the middle. We'll go from the 10-yard line all the way into the other goal line. We'll turn around, come back, and do it the other way. Okay? I think it's great work I think it also helps with conditioning, making your kids line up and play up-tempo. I think it helps you change your snap counts in your tempo and have your kids work on it while they're tired. And I think it helps your communication from the sideline and your personnel changes doing an up-tempo drill in a game-type setting. Even though you're working it on air, okay, you want to work on the communication. You want to make sure your kids are taking the right steps to their assignments. You want to make sure backs and linemen are finishing 10 yards down the field after their assignments. You want to make sure the quarterback carries out fakes and finishes. You want to make sure your receivers finish. So it also becomes a conditioning drill on top of just working on your communication and your up-tempo and your change of pace stuff on air up and down the field. All right. Right after that, usually we'll go to special teams, and we'll do about 15 to 20 minutes of special teams. I let my special teams coach decide what he wants to do that day, whether he wants to work punt, punt return, PAT, kickoff, kickoff return. All right, I don't tell him what he's got to do that day. I tell him how much time he has. So we usually have about 15 to 20 minutes of special teams. And then because we play both ways, all right, we have to account for that by ending the day with some type of work on the other side of the ball so it stays fresh in our kids' minds. And if we just do offense all in one day, that means we may go 2 to 3 days without doing defense. And now all of a sudden our kids are stale. They forgot the coverages. Maybe the game plan has some tweaks that week, and we forgot what we were doing because we didn't do it for 2 days in a row. So I like to put some type of, all right, flipped team period, whether it be a blitz period, maybe we're working on coverage 7-on-7 and the D-line's doing pass rush. Whatever it is, I like to have 20 minutes of defense at the end of my offensive day to make sure, all right, that we are keeping defense or offense fresh in our kids' minds because we play both ways. Okay? After that, we're usually done. Depending on how the practice went, the pace, the tempo, all right, we're either going to be done if we feel good about what we've done, or we may run 2 to 3 half-gassers, or we may run some 60s, 40s, and 20s for conditioning. Earlier in the year, we'll do a little bit more conditioning work. As the year starts to get on and you have attrition and injuries and other things, we feel like our tempo and our pace of practice helps get us in shape. We feel like having spring football and then training all summer helps get us in shape. So we're not going to be one of those teams that after practice runs 8 million gassers or 110s. We feel like we need to get that done during practice with the pace and the tempo at which we play, so that after practice we don't have to spend another 20-25 minutes conditioning. Another reason I don't like to spend a ton of time conditioning afterwards is sometimes maybe 2 or 3 days a week I might have my guys lifting after practice. If they're lifting after practice, I don't want to spend an extra 20 minutes conditioning and then cutting down our time in the weight room. Okay? So again, this is just a simple way that you can organize a practice plan on an offensive day that incorporates everything I think you need to incorporate. Remember that time of year will always change your practice plan. Earlier in the year, you're going to do a lot more fundamental and technical work and installing. Later in the year, when there's less installing and you feel like, all right, you still have to do your technical and fundamental work, you just might not have as much time to do it. By that time of the year, you're usually cleaning up your techniques and your fundamentals as opposed to actually teaching your techniques and your fundamentals. I think it's good to start with pre-practice to get extra reps, shotgun snaps, quarterback warmed up, receivers can catch an extra 10 to 15 balls, running backs can do ball security. Okay. Coming out of flex, I'm a dynamic flex guy. I'm not a group stretch in lines where everybody's doing, you know, hamstring stretches and quad stretches and butterfly and, you know, shoulder stuff or whatever. I think we're a bigger fan of dynamic, 6 lines, 20 kids or, you know, 18, 15 kids in each line depending on how big your program is. And we go through shin grab, Russian walk where we might be kicking a leg up to stretch the hamstring, shin grab, pulling a shin all the way up through the chest, then working butt kicks, then maybe working lunge movements with a twist to get the obliques and the back loosened up, and then maybe some form runs, 50%, 75% full speed. Coming out of that, all right, love the live work, okay? And then the rest of the practice you can kind of incorporate. There is no one set practice plan. The one thing you want to make sure is that you're getting everything touched upon that you feel like you need to touch upon to win that week, okay? So in this practice plan here, this isn't a practice plan for everybody. This isn't a practice plan that Alabama uses or Florida uses or, you know, the Jets or, you know, the Baltimore Ravens or the New England Patriots use. You want to take practice plans from other people and mold them into your own. Okay, so this is a practice plan that works for us. I like having skeleton and pass protection. I like having 11-on-11 runs to get the receivers involved. I like having screen and draw periods to work on my screens and draws so I don't have to script them into other places. I like doing team 11-on-11 with runs and passes combined because I think it's the best way to get a true look from your scout team. I love the up-tempo drill. I'm going to do it almost every day. I may start practice sometimes early in practice with it. I may end practice with it, but I'm going to do up-tempo on air. Okay. Special teams every day. We don't do special teams on Tuesday, Wednesday. We do them every day. All right. 20 minutes of special teams every day. All right. Finish on the other side of the ball if you're a team that plays both ways like we do. If you're an offensive day, finish with defense. If you're a defensive day, finish with offense. Keep it fresh in your kids' minds. How much you condition at the end of practice is up to you. All right, if you lift weights or watch film after practice, that's up to you. All right, practice plans are individual things that each coaching staff have to make based on the situations and the obstacles that you have at your program, okay, to overcome. Some schools don't get out till 3:30, so maybe they can't practice till 4. Later in the year, you come into a limited light issue if it's getting dark at 5:30. All right, this is a practice plan for us that works for us at our school. It's not that same every day. We will change it. I think it's very important to understand that you need to change the order of your practice plan because your kids get stale every day knowing that they're going from skeleton to team run to screens and draws to up-tempo. I think you need to flip the order of these things, okay, and keep it fresh and change it for your kids. And then remember, your practice plan should be adaptable and adjustable to what you're struggling with during the year. All right, if there's certain things during the year that you are just absolutely poor at, you're going to have to emphasize those a little bit more in practice. All right, so remember that your practice plan is adjustable. It should be flexible. It's not set in stone. But also remember, unless you go onto the field with a set plan for 2.5 hours, all right, of how you want to attack that day, all right, you're not going to have a lot of good results unless you understand strategically and in an organized fashion how you want to attack that 2.5 hours. If you only have 2.5 hours, you know, once you're on the field, if we get on the field at 3, but we start pre-practice drills, if we start flex at 3:10 and we only have till 5:25, I want to make sure that once we start flex, that 2 hours and 15 minutes, I want to make sure that I'm maximizing my drills and my time with my kids to get the most out of that practice. Okay? So keep your practice plan flexible. Keep it for you. Do what you think works for your team best. Don't be afraid to change. There is no one set practice plan in stone. All right? Do what works for you. Do what's best for your kids. Okay? And just keep in mind that you got to have structure and you got to have organization. At the end of the day, the goal is to get these kids to play fast, to get them to know their assignments. All right? Structuring and organizing your practices will help you gain reps, okay, which will help you improve upon your entire offensive and defensive scheme and your operating procedure. And the more reps that you get, the better you can improve your operating procedure, the faster you can play, the more pressure you can put on the opponent. All right, guys, I'll catch you next time. Keep in mind, don't play well unless you play fast.